Happy Thursday, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. I want to do a quick video update on what's going on in the Atlantic Basin. We had Tropical Storm Gabrielle form last night, dissipated into a tropical depression today. And the reason why has been a consistent theme this season in the Atlantic Basin. We've had a lot of dry air and a lot of shear, and storms have just not been able to maintain themselves adequately in what seems to be a very hostile environment. Now, when you look carefully here, a couple things you'll notice right off the bat is the low-level center is going this direction and the mid-level center is going that direction. Why is that happening? Well, essentially what's going on here is we've got southwesterly shear at the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, which is pushing the tops of the thunderstorms off to the northeast, while down at the surface, or sometimes referred to as the Caribbean trade winds, are moving from east to west, and that just does not allow for storms to maintain themselves. So we're going to continue to see the low-level center dissipate and move off in this direction, while the mid-level center is going to merge with this tropical wave to the north and east. Now the question is, does this redevelop into something? And it would likely it would get a new name because it's not the low-level center. But here's a problem. Look off to the east of that, and you see this kind of hazy looking area. That's what we call the SAL, or the Saharan air layer. This is dry, dusty air coming in from the east. This is eventually going to have an impact trough which extends up in this direction. So I just don't think we're going to see anything be able to maintain itself very long, even if it does develop. I wouldn't be surprised if something develops there, but you can see that dry Saharan desert air coming in from the east. And when you look at the modeling of that, you can see that big plume moving across the central Atlantic and getting caught up. Now the model tries to blow up the remnants of Gabrielle and move it to the north and east, and I just don't see that happening. It could redevelop eventually, but this dust looks like it's going to get entrained in the circulation and maybe kind of choke it off. Remember, it's just not the dry air. There's stable air and wind shear associated with the SAL as it comes off the coast of Africa. And while a lot of people will tell you that SAL isn't the only reason we haven't had a lot of storms, it certainly is a big part of it, and I don't think it's independent of the other reasons. We've had a lot of this coming off the coast of Africa, which has not only caused dry air, but it's caused a lot of stability in the Atlantic, and the vertical instability has been lacking for storms to maintain themselves. I don't think these are independent of each other. Whatever is causing the lack of instability, is likely the same mechanism that's causing all this dust to come off. They're not independent of each other. So for whatever reason this season, we haven't seen storms be able to maintain themselves. So regardless of the hurricane season forecast, when you start observing storms not being able to maintain themselves, as a forecaster, you start to see trends, and you have to pick up on that. And right now, the trend this season is for storms that have a tough time maintaining themselves, even when all the environmental conditions look somewhat favorable. There's just something that's not working well in the Atlantic. It doesn't mean that things couldn't change, but we are not going to have an above average season, especially from an ACE or accumulated cyclone energy standpoint. We may end up above average for named storms, but we're not going to get a bunch of hurricanes. Here's the water vapor loop. I love this image because you can clearly see the trough dropping down over the eastern U.S. that's causing all this southwesterly flow and shear, and is actually going to steer whatever's down here near Puerto Rico off to the northeast. Especially the farther north this gets, the chance of it coming west is almost, there's nothing 100% in meteorology, but it's very unlikely. It's just not going to happen. We've got too much southwesterly flow here. The steering currents are pretty clear here. And when you look at the shear on the GFS, we'll go out a couple days here, maybe 3 days. You just see this wall of shear and southwesterly flow that's just not going to allow for anything to get anywhere near the United States. It doesn't mean we couldn't see something blow up in the Gulf of Mexico, which is certainly a possibility right here. But even here, this is going to be, if it blows up, it's not going to have a lot of time. It's running out of space, and it's going to move into Mexico. So even there, I don't think anything is going to stay going very long. Now, looking at some of the other products, I want to show you what's going on as far as, are we going to see anything else develop? A quick look at the Atlantic GFS, we'll look at that real quickly. And again, it's still coming in. The next tropical wave coming off Africa, the GFS, tries to develop slightly, but you just don't see anything that looks like it's going to become a strong tropical storm or even a hurricane at this point, which leads me to the other record-breaking stat of the day. Right now, if we would have a hurricane form today, which we don't, we would be the fourth latest formation of a hurricane in the Atlantic Basin since 1963, which is the satellite era. So I don't foresee anything happening until after the 11th. It's a little bit of a limb, but it's not. I don't think we're gonna. I think we're gonna set a record for the latest forming storm on record in the Atlantic Basin, at least as far as the satellite era. Now, that should have a huge caveat. The number of storms is just not important. It's whether or not we get one storm that impacts the United States. So I don't want people to let their guard down and say, "Oh, this has been a quiet season." Yes, it has, but it only takes one storm impacting the United States, and we could still get a very strong storm to develop, especially close to the United States, because the environment is actually a little bit more favorable as you get closer to the United States. So the Gulf of Mexico, the Western Caribbean, and off the southeast coast, there's certainly a chance we could get something to develop, and it could become a major hurricane, and maybe mid to late September or even early October, we could have a landfall. So please don't let your guard down. But for right now, we are on a record-breaking pace, basically, to not have a hurricane form in the Atlantic. So no worries right now as far as Gabrielle, and maybe we'll have something form in the Gulf of Mexico later today. We'll have to see. We've got the hurricane drone, the Global Hawk's been flying out there for about a week now. We've got very good upper air data that we normally wouldn't have from that drone aircraft collecting that information. So when you start looking at some of the long-range guidance, we actually have some pretty good information coming in from the Atlantic Basin, better than we have in years past. Hope that kind of answers some of your questions about what's going on in the tropics. Again, I'll be on today at 4, 5, and 6. We'll talk a little bit about this and talk about whether or not we're going to see any autumn air heading our way anytime soon here in the southeast. Have a great day.